today's senior speeches. Our first speaker today is Bridgette Haraden, and Bridgette will be introduced by her father, Dr. Haraden.
My name is Haraden, and I have the honor to introduce my daughter, Bridgette. When we first came to collegiate, everybody got classified as a class. And of course, Bridgette's a class of 2024. It's pretty neat because I graduated in 1984, and my father had graduated in 1944. So it's kind of neat that each one of us was graduating about 40 years apart. If you think back, however, in 1944, my father didn't have the choices that I had or that Bridgette has today. He only had one choice. And the only thing he didn't know is where he was going. And that was either to Europe or to the Pacific to fight the war. One year we went home, Bridgette had a project to do, and she had to interview someone who went overseas. So she interviewed my father, and he talked about the war, and I heard about a lot of things I'd never heard about before. You see, I only saw my father cry twice in my lifetime. One was when I graduated from medical school. I always thought those were tears of joy. Now I sometimes wonder how many of the tears of joy was he had no more tuition to pay for. But he brought out a picture of his battalion, 500 men. And my wife asked a simple question. And I saw my father start to cry. You see, after he composed himself, the question that my wife had asked was how many people made it back. Of those 500 people, 500 men, he said maybe a dozen, no more than 2. It made you think about how much sacrifice people had given during the world wars. In 1984, when I graduated, things were a little bit turbulent then too. My father had lost his job. Inflation was out of control. Costs of everything was out of control. And 50% of the farmers had lost their farm because they couldn't afford to pay their loans. It's amazing to me in 2024 for how much the world has changed. Technology has brought us so many light years from where we were in 1984. Unfortunately, how much the world hasn't changed. I have some great stories to tell about Bridgette today, and she can thank her sisters for stopping many of them. I told one to Brooklyn, and she hysterically laughed and said, "Dad, you can't say that. People don't get your sense of humor." So I'm sitting at a field hockey game, and out comes a fathead of Bridgette. And then I knew what to talk about. Every time I look at this picture, I think of Bridgette sitting in her packing play. You see, Bridgette was always into everything, and she still is. So my wife would put her in this packing play with a bunch of stuffed animals. And one day I came home, started talking to Beth, and I looked over and I see this stuffed animal go flying across the room, farther than I could ever see or imagine a 6-month-old could throw a stuffed animal. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. My wife goes, "You've seen nothing yet." So I look over again, and here's all these animals being evicted out of the packing play like a popcorn machine, just throwing them constantly. I'm like, wow, that's impressive. And once again, Beth said, "You haven't seen anything yet. Wait till she gets to the lamb." I call it the sacrificial lamb. She proceeds to throw this lamb even farther than any other stuffed animal I'd seen. Starts jumping up and down, screaming, "I want out." One day, this scenario repeated itself many days after. But one day I came home and it was a really bad day. See, a lot of people were very ill, and people were trying to die. And the only thing that stood between the patient and death was the physicians and the nurses. And that day, I had found myself on the front of that line most of the day. I got home, and there was Bridgette in her packing play. All the animals had already been evicted, and she was screaming, "I want out." And the only thing I could think of was, "We all want out." And my wife said, "What'd you say to her?" I said, "We all want out." Because see, as everyone sits in this room today, there's something we want out of. A lot of times, we don't need to get out of it, and when we get out of it, we wish we hadn't. And there's a lot of things that we need to get out of that we don't because we're too scared, or it's too complicated, or there's too much time invested. I hope your time at Collegiate and the education that you've given all give you the courage to get out when you need to, and the knowledge and wisdom to stay when you should. And with that, I introduce my daughter, Bridgette.
Good morning. Everyone faces things that are hard. Everyone in this room has gone through something that may have been traumatic for them for different reasons. Whether this is a life-changing event or something slight that one can recover from, everyone faces things that inflict conflict within their lives. Many students have struggled at some point in their life with the topic I'm going to speak on, for various reasons. School. Many people in this room have experienced something hard within or outside the classroom at some point in their education. Whether you have struggled with understanding a concept in the classroom, frustrations with sports, or even friendships, everyone here has faced some conflict within or involving school. I sat at my computer thinking for weeks about what I wanted this speech to be about. I wanted to give a speech that people could relate to. But also give a speech that is meaningful and valuable. I wrote about 5 drafts, each 5 pages long, and worried too much that this wasn't perfect enough, or this one was a little too all over the place. This was simply because I'm an overthinker, who thinks and cares too much about what others think. Every word that comes out of my mouth, I always internally think to myself, "Bridgette, why would you say that? That was so dumb." No one is harder on me than myself, and I hope many students in this room can relate to that. School's been something that has never been easy for me. I have always been the kid who has to try a little more than others, and I often still couldn't see myself getting to my hopeful end result. I've consistently been someone who tries to brush off challenges, project an image of everything being fine, put on a smile, and carry on with my day, navigating through each moment one step at a time. From a very young age, I was diagnosed with severe ADHD. For those of you who don't know, a person with ADHD has differences in brain development and brain activity that affect attention, the ability to sit still, and self-control. Many people have ADHD, and it is a common thing a lot of people share with one another. Some don't have to take any medicine, while others have to, and I fall into that category. ADHD for me has been part of the reason for my constant internal judgment throughout my life. On the inside, I think at times about how much ADHD is a blessing and a curse at the same time. On the one hand, it defines who I am and makes my bubbly, loud, obnoxious, and sometimes sassy personality. I apologize to my parents for getting the significant load of this despicable and constant bothering behavior that I put upon them. On the other end of the spectrum, it held me back academically and made learning difficult for me. I spent many times wanting to give up, thinking about how I could never be as smart as the other kids in my class. But since last year, I have learned how to overcome that. January 2023, for many, was the start of everyone's new year. But for me, it was the start of something that would excel a downfall on my academics and mental place way more heavily. That January was the year that I had to have hip surgery. For many, hip surgeries typically will appear in individuals who are senior citizenship, but for me, I was at the ripe age of 17 having to get hip surgery. I was doing PT with people in their 80s recovering from hip surgery. 2 weeks after my surgery, I continued to get humbled when my parents and I went to a meet and greet with Mark Wahlberg at a liquor barn. He looked me dead in the eyes and went, "Wow, hip surgery at your age is crazy, isn't it?" I was mortified. In all seriousness, the surgery, like I said, took a toll on me more significantly than I ever could have thought. I missed the first 2 weeks of the second semester of my junior year, which is typically the most challenging year of a student's high school career. Missing the first 2 weeks heavily impacted me. I struggled so hard to catch up, as I already was struggling in school with my ADHD alone. The problem that came with my surgery was also due to the fact I had time on my hands, time that I didn't have before. Collegiate students typically are involved with several activities. While I was sitting at home, all those other students could do activities as they pleased. I had not been motivated to do school or hold friendships, and I was simply at a place of loss with myself. I'd become even more mentally drained of myself than I'd previously seen. Finally, in March, everything started to turn around for me. I eventually turned my academics in the right direction and met people in that month who helped me more than they could have ever imagined. The relationships and friendships I gained during that month saved me more than I could realize, and I'm forever grateful for everyone who helped me out of the dark hole I was in during that time. To each of my teachers, who demonstrated profound understanding and support, aiding me in catching up on my academics, and to my best friends, who were consistently there for me, offering a comforting shoulder to lean on whenever I needed to cry. I would especially like to thank my parents. I've always looked up to my parents. Both of them work extremely hard for the education that they have, and work exceptionally hard to ensure that my sisters and I have access to all the resources we need. I look up to my parents more than they know, and wish that I can grow up and be as successful, loving, caring, and genuine as them for my family one day. Struggles for myself have impacted me greatly, but they have truly shaped me into the individual I am standing before you all today. For everyone in this room, struggles can impact everyone in different ways, but the biggest advice that I can give to the seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen in this room is that rather than letting those difficulties tear you down, build off them, grow from them, and use them as motivation to try better, persevere, and become the picture of yourself you want to be. Thank you.
Our second speaker today is Jonathan Pearson, and Jonathan will be introduced by his sisters, Isabella Nymer and Sloan Pearson.
So JP is my brother, and growing up, we had the definition of a love-hate relationship. Some days I would ask you to stop breathing, which is rare, but I have asked that question before. And some days I was able to tolerate you. Some examples are when I would finally let you give in to letting you help me with my homework, but I'm pretty sure if you've witnessed that, you know that ends up with us yelling at each other and calling each other stupid. Or how you have this obsession of only annoying me when there's no adult around. And when I try to say something to mom or dad, he makes me look like an idiot. Some parts of you will be missed when you're gone, but I'm sure the barging into my room despite the knock sign, the obnoxious Fortnite yelling we can all hear around the house, the leaving at 6:45 in the morning when school doesn't even start until 8:15. I'll never understand that. But despite all these unique traits of yours, at the end of the day, you are my brother, and I do enjoy doing things with you that both of us like game nights, tubing, boat rides, movie nights, and vacations. Me being the youngest, it's hard for me to actually admit when I'm having a good time with you, but there are times that I definitely do. And those times will be remembered, and I can't wait to make more memories with you, whether you're an hour away or 5 states.
I'm honored to be introducing my brother Heath, or as most of you know him, Jake. Heath, when describing you, many different and strange things come to mind. like how you think you can sing and often compare your vocal abilities to Shawn Mendes, but in reality you should probably never sing in public in regards of everyone's well-being. Or how you constantly eat so much food because you're somehow always bulking. I'm not sure when the bulk is supposed to kick in, but I guess aside from those things, when describing you, I think of the words hardworking, encouraging, and most of all, loving. You're one of the most dedicated and hardworking people I know. The countless hours you've spent absolutely grinding in the kitchen of Jet's Pizza, or the many painfully early morning practices you attended with a smile on your face exhibits that quality in you. You're also my #1 fan in most everything I do, especially on the basketball court, and although I hate to admit it, you've taught me just about everything I know. You cheer me on in all my vocal performances even though they don't interest you, and you never fail to brighten my mood with some words of encouragement and love. I have yet to meet someone with more love in their hearts than you. Your love for your family, friends, and activities is so present and will be dearly missed when you're gone. Thanks for all the talks, driveway basketball games, and rides to who knows where. I love you and can't wait to see your future.
Not appreciate that at all. If you know me at all, you know that I am completely and utterly terrified of public speaking. This all started back in 3rd grade debate club where, let's just say my first match ever ended with me running out of the room crying. Since I was then scarred for life, to mitigate my nerves about giving a senior speech, I asked my peers about possible topics I'm thinking of. I asked them things like, what do you think of this topic, or how do you think this would sound? Well, it turns out high school friends are not the best at lifting your spirits. My hopes for this strategy were destroyed as everybody basically shut down every idea I had. So, instead of being creative and thinking of a new idea, I'm talking about all of them. The first topic I was thinking of was finding that thing that makes you you. At the time, it seemed like a good topic, but was declared to me as boring, which it probably is. With that being said, the fact that the speech was deemed boring is not going to stop me from giving it, so here's what I would say. Something that usually defines people is their name, but once I got to collegiate, I shortly realized that Jonathan was not my only name. If you're only familiar with me as JP, let me go through the history of my nicknames for you. It all started with preseason basketball freshman year, where a senior, William Rue, started calling me JP. For an incoming freshman with no friends at the school, I thought this was pretty cool, as it was a simple nickname I could get behind. But by sophomore year, when even my teachers started calling me JP, I started to get a little more worried. Fast forward to my senior year, and things have gotten out of hand. Javette calls me J Pimp. Ainsley walks by me in the halls and calls me J Pizzle. Isaac calls me Six, which is a nickname dating back to some scary Lieberman basketball days. You can find me on the Seneca Park basketball courts as Seneca P. That was from Downard. And just recently getting the nickname Johnny P from Mr. Carr and others that I cannot say on this stage. Jamal. Although these nicknames can seem weird and super out of the box at times, because they have changed. Before these names, I was introverted and unwilling to get out of my comfort zone, especially going to a new school. But simply changing Jonathan to JP has helped me integrate into the collegiate community, and I have now embraced it as a part of who I am. My nicknames are not the only thing that makes me me, but nonetheless, it became interesting to me how such a fundamental part of someone's identity can be changed or added on to by others. Instead of asking the question, what makes me me, I challenge you to ask the question, who made me? The second topic I was thinking of was valuing your time. I thought that this topic might be good for collegiate kids who are stressing over school 24/7. This topic was deemed basic and unoriginal. Although some might think that is basic and unoriginal, this topic is still important to me. As most of you know, I work at Bridgette's Pizza. A very simple job, but one that I spend way too much time on. During the first quarter, this is what a typical week would look like for me. I would work 30 to 40 hours a week, along with doing school and basketball. This large workload would cause me some weeks to only see my mom once out of the entire week. At the time, when I was less self-aware of how much I was working, this felt amazing. I was always busy, still had good grades, and let me tell you, the bank account was not hurting. I then began to question how I would maintain such a large workload during the upcoming basketball season, where I would have more practices and less time to work. During this time of basketball and more free time on my hands, I went into a time of reflection on my workload. Very quickly, the lack of attentiveness to my family and my senior year became clear. I was spending barely any time with my family. I was also missing out on school sporting events, such as Brennan clearly getting robbed of a hat trick against Francis Parker, and ruining the chances of making lifetime senior memories. My dad decided to take a stand on my large workload and pulled me aside to say, "Son, go be a kid. Go play Xbox." Although these words are every kid's dream, it put into perspective the amount of time I was wasting. I was valuing my money more than my time or the opportunities to make memories. You can make more money, you can never make more time, so value it more than ever. The third topic I was thinking of was finding the place that you call home. Thought this was a good idea until Ben Norden on the way to the Louisville versus Duke game said, and I quote, "That's bad, like really bad." Well, to give Ben Norden a massive slap in the face, here it is. Living in a split household since the age of 3 has posed some challenges, but has been all I have done. Switching week after week to take the 10-minute drive to either my dad or mom's house with hands full of stuff has been my life for 14 years. I'm not complaining though. I'm very thankful for the parents that I have in the position they have put me in today. With this being said, a part of this dynamic is that it has been hard for me to decide what to call home. I spend equal time at my dad and mom's houses, while also spending every last penny I get to take flights down to Florida to see my grandparents. Both houses have their pros and cons, which I will not get into right now for obvious reasons, but they both have an important commonality between them. It is the fact that both households are filled with supportive people who share the same values as my own and lift me up the most. In the sense of basketball and NBA 2K ability, my dad's house is the place I call home. But in the sense of being connected with my grandparents and constantly hanging out with the neighbors, my mom's house is the place I call home. I challenge you all to find that place you can call home. Not your home literally, but find that group of people that supports you, the people who lift you up and share the same values as yourself. Find your people. Now, I know what you are thinking. Why did this guy just talk about 3 seemingly unrelated topics in his senior speech? Most of you might even tell me it's a bad idea, like most people did with these topics. I'm not doing this to purposely have a bad or incoherent senior speech. I'm doing this to say live life by the beat of your own drum. These topics may not have been something that meant a lot to other people, but they meant a lot to me. I wrote about the things that I wanted to talk about, not what other people wanted me to talk about. Do not do something based on the terms of somebody else or just for the gain of social acceptance. If you want to do something, then do it. If you don't, then don't. If you represent the opinions of others, then you're not representing yourself. The reason that you are not moving forward is because you're stuck on the opinions of others. Thank you.
Our final speaker today is Alejandro Downard, and Alejandro will be introduced by Mr. Staley.
It's a great honor to introduce Alejandro to you today. Alejandro has been a glutton for punishment and has been in my class the last 3 years. Although I will say the punishment has been mutual given the massive torment he has put me through trying to discern his hieroglyphic handwriting. It's bad, but we're working on it. Alejandro has remained a constant in my life at Collegiate. He's a frequent figure in my classroom in the mornings. We have conversations about government, about life, or really about anything. Alejandro has an excellent sense of humor and can often tie together any interesting story about his life, despite his inability to actually tie a tie. Yes, I've done that for him a few times over the years. Today he told me that he had it tied for the last year and hasn't moved it. Despite his failures with a winter knot, Alejandro is a bright, gifted, hardworking, and dedicated student. Alejandro has always been the type of student who won your class, the student willing to take a risk with an answer, the student not afraid of failure. I am proud to know Alejandro and excited to introduce him to you today. Without further ado, Alejandro Bridgette.
I've made many decisions in my life. Some of them good, some of them bad, most of them questionable. However, one thing that I have chosen in my life with few regrets is procrastination. I don't mean to say that I don't get things done on time. I do. But more so, I mean that I specialize in waiting for the last possible moment to do anything. I feel that it's done with science at this point. And even this speech was written at 1 in the morning, just a few hours before it was due. Procrastination has become important to me, not just because it's a system that has helped me get through so many challenges that high school has thrown at me, but because it's something that I chose. And it has taught me a lot about the value of picking a system and making it work, no matter how stressful it may be. When I arrived at collegiate, I was introduced to the concept of block scheduling. The very next thing I heard was how important it was that I do all my work the very day it was assigned, and how this process would help me stay on schedule for years. I'm not saying there's an issue with this, but it's not for me. Personally, I'm more of a do your homework the very moment before it's due kind of person. Many people have told me that procrastination is an unsustainable lifestyle, that I need more than 4 hours of sleep. But I say procrastination works for me and allows me to maximize my productivity when necessary. Honestly, the social stigma around procrastination has made it hard for people to accept it as a valid process. But I believe that it has its own benefits, and today, I would like the opportunity to encourage you to choose your own system and explain to you why I chose mine. First of all, I believe that procrastination has a very negative reputation, certainly in society, but especially among students. I, like many of you I'm sure, have had the concept that we are meant to be as productive as possible at all times, reinforced in my mind by every parent and teacher I've encountered, with the exception of Ms. Crawford, a fellow procrastinator. However, I've come to realize that there is a strong difference between productivity and efficiency, and contrary to public belief, I think that procrastination is in fact efficient. Obviously, I don't expect any of you to take my word for this, but as someone very, very experienced in testing limits of procrastination, I believe that one of the benefits people fail to realize is just how efficient you become when you have a 5-page paper due in 3 hours and you have not done anything. There is no time for things like writer's block in situations like these. Therefore, because I procrastinated, it didn't take me days to come up with an idea. It took me 5 minutes, because that's the amount of time. Personally, I'm a very easily distracted person. Under normal circumstances, I can focus on a given task for maybe 10 minutes max, before I'm so far off track that the memory of what I was doing has completely vanished from my mind. However, when I have 60 pages of English reading for Dr. Link and 30 minutes before the start of class, my mind doesn't have the option of wandering. Procrastination allows me to focus and put my head down when I need to, and save my free time as well. Another thing that makes me love procrastinating is that it allows me to really lean into extracurriculars. Last year, I did 3 sports, I worked a job on weekends, I ran 2 clubs, volunteered twice a week, and did a theater show. And I broke my knee. It was a lot. But procrastination actually helped me manage the workload. Procrastination allowed me to do the things I wanted to do, and then get the work done late at night after. Maybe too late. Maybe way too late. If I needed to go to tennis practice, teach an ESL class, and make a documentary, I could do it. Obviously, when procrastinating, we work under the assumption that sleep is optional, self-imposed. You can choose it if you want. Personally, sleep is proven fairly unnecessary, and I'm under the impression that if you feel you can sacrifice sleep to procrastinate, no one should stop you. More than anything, for me, procrastination has always been about choice and self-control. There's a clear difference between barely meeting a deadline and failing to accomplish the goal. I think everyone's crossed the line at some point. You forget to turn in your homework disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Whatever the experience was, we've all forgotten something or cut it a little too close. Now, while you may see this as a reason not to procrastinate, I see it as all the more reason to do so. When I procrastinate, I am forced to prioritize things in the order of importance, which basically translates to what's due soonest and how long it's going to take me. However, this also means that procrastination can help you learn incredibly important life skills, like how to prioritize tasks under a deadline and how to juggle a large number of objectives at once. Procrastination teaches you to work under pressure, sometimes too much pressure, and figure out exactly what's most important in the moment. Obviously, this will lead to failures. For example, I was emailed the deadline for this draft of my senior speech almost a week ahead. Yet due to my procrastination checking my email, I actually found out it was due 3 days ahead. And then I did it the morning of. There are many varying degrees of procrastination that depend on the person and their priorities. I'm not trying to say I'm the best procrastinator and that it's a perfect system, because it is definitely not. Procrastinating is far from a perfect system, and in certain cases, it can be quite dangerous. You definitely don't want to be working on November 1 college apps on November 1, which I was very close to doing. Similarly, you don't want to turn in work invoices a week late to your boss, which I have definitely done. However, at the end of the day, I procrastinate because it's a system that works for me. Plenty of people have told me that I should just come home, get my work done, live stress-free, maybe sleep 8 hours. But that kind of system doesn't work for me. I get off course. I start a new TV show, and all of a sudden it's midnight, and I have not done anything. So maybe that's you. And just like me, you procrastinate and wait till the last minute to do everything, no matter what everyone tells you. And that's okay. If that's not you, that's fine too. I'm not here to tell you to procrastinate and be exactly like me, because honestly, procrastination is definitely not for everybody. It's a system based on a surprisingly large amount of large discipline for the amount of laziness associated with it, and a little more stress than the human body is meant to cope with on a daily basis. However, what I really think is important about my relationship with procrastination is that it's something that I chose. Even though a lot of people don't understand procrastination and its benefits, it's something that works for me. And at the end of the day, that's what I want to encourage you to do. You don't have to procrastinate or be lazy or anything, but I would just want you to find something that works for you, no matter what anybody else tells you about it, and try it out. It's not going to work every time. It may cause you an inordinate amount of anxiety if it's not something you're used to, but don't be scared of trying something new, regardless of the consequences.